course, the other story we're following this morning is the nuclear crisis at the Fukushima power plant. Crews suffered a setback when smoke began billowing from reactor number 3. It comes as workers began training on a last-ditch effort that would see them encase the crippled reactors in concrete. We will take you live to Japan for the very latest on the nuclear threat.
See you. Efforts to cool Japan's crippled nuclear reactors have hit another snag as concerns about radiation, tainted food, rain, and dust are rising. Some workers have been removed from the Fukushima nuclear complex in the northeastern part of the country after gray smoke was seen rising from a reactor. The evacuation came shortly after the Japanese Nuclear Safety Agency said they were confident that the situation at the plant was coming under control. Workers have been battling to control rising temperatures in the disaster-stricken plant since they were dismantled by Japan's massive earthquake and tsunami 10 days ago.
Radioactive smoke is now spewing from reactor 3. However, officials say they don't know what's causing it. For the latest, we go live to CTV's Tom Walters in Osaka, Japan this morning. Tom, I guess there's conflicting reports, but to the best of your knowledge, what are you hearing?
Yeah, Bev, one thing you can say with certainty here is there are always conflicting reports. But what we're hearing right now is that, as you mentioned, workers have been evacuated from the plant because of this new and heightened risk. Smoke is coming from the number 3 reactor. That is a particularly troubling reactor because it's the one that contains plutonium. Officials say they're not sure what's causing the smoke. They're not sure what's burning. About the only thing they've been able to do is rule out a cause, which they say was not electrical in nature because they haven't yet hooked up outside power to that reactor. There are also suggestions that there may be a similar problem in the second reactor building. But this, of course, is a fast-moving and still somewhat unclear situation.
I understand also that there is some training going on as to the potential for burying these plants in concrete.
Yeah, that's right. One of the options that's being investigated is essentially high-pressure hoses to simply dump concrete onto these reactors to smother them. But in the meantime, the strongest hope remains being able to bring cooling systems back online. They have got power reconnected to the second reactor unit. That's the one where they can't use their Band-Aid fix, which is pouring water in through the roof. The second reactor still has an intact building around it. So they've got power reconnected, but they've been unable to bring the cooling system online because the pump is damaged, and so they're bringing spare parts in. So no real progress there.
No, and seemingly more troubles. Tom, thank you for the update. Now the latest on Japan's nuclear threat.
Certainly something we're watching closely. Efforts to contain the crisis at the Fukushima power plant hit another snag this morning. Crews had to evacuate after reactor 3 began smoking. Firefighters have continued spraying the crippled facility with water, and workers have started training to spray concrete. Now, the food supply is threatening as radioactivity has been found in vegetables, milk, and the tap water also of a village near the Fukushima facility contained as well. We're now joined by Gordon Edwards. He's with the Canadian Coalition for Nuclear Responsibility, joining us this morning from Montreal. Mr. Edwards, great to have you. I want to start with this reactor 3, which, as I understand it, contains plutonium. Tell us, first of all, why plutonium is particularly dangerous.
Well, plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years, whereas uranium has a half-life of 4.5 billion years. This means that uranium disintegrates much more slowly. Plutonium disintegrates much more rapidly, and also it goes to parts of the body which make it particularly dangerous for the blood-forming organs, the bone marrow, and it lodges in the body where it stays for a long time. It's also known to be very potent in causing lung cancer.
You've been tracking these efforts to contain the situation at the Fukushima Daiichi plant ever since it first began. In your view, how would you characterize things? I mean, it seems that every time we hear of some progress, there's been another setback. Are things getting better, generally speaking, or is the situation quite dire still?
The situation is still very dangerous, especially with Unit 3. There's two problems there. There's the core of the reactor, which is building up pressure unexpectedly, and in order to relieve that pressure, they have to give off a large puff of radioactive steam with radioactivity in it, probably a lot more than previously. Then there's the pool. The pool has drained sufficiently in water so that nobody can get close to it. It gives off lethal radiation. The water, when it was covering the pool, provided a biological shield, so you could actually stand and look down at the pool safely. Now, nobody can get anywhere close to it without getting a lethal dose of radiation. Even the helicopter pilots can't fly close enough to actually hit the target. So this is a real problem. And if it catches fire, then you can have an awful lot of radioactive material spread over very large areas. Already it's showing up in food more than 100 kilometers away.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that. Found in milk and in spinach as well. We're hearing, at least from Japanese officials, that there isn't much to worry about right now. Is there any reason not to believe them? Should we be concerned?
I think that's a terrible thing for the Japanese authorities to be saying. These are man-made radioactive materials. The natural level of radioactive iodine was 0 before nuclear power came along. The background level of cesium, radioactive cesium, was 0. The background level of plutonium was 0. To compare these levels of man-made poisons with background is deceptive and not helpful. There is no such thing in nature as a radioactive material which concentrates in the thyroid gland. Only iodine does that. The difficulty is that we're not talking here about standing beside the spinach. We're talking about eating it, in which case it concentrates in the mother's milk. It then concentrates again in the thyroid gland of a child that might be nursing. You have a double whammy concentration, and then it stays in the body, irradiating the body for a long time afterwards. So I think it's completely irresponsible to say that this is not to worry about. I think what they should be doing, in fact, is they should be putting on the internet, readily accessible, a list of all the radioactive poisons which have been released, and there's dozens of them, and all the major foodstuffs which people might be ingesting, and indicate how much radioactive material of each kind is in each food.
Yeah, CTV's Tom Walters saying there from Osaka that getting information has been difficult and at times conflicting. Gordon Edwards joining us live in Montreal this morning. Gordon, thank you.
You're welcome.